Hey everyone, it's been a little while since the last episode or the last video, but today I'm going to be making something a little bit different. I'm going to be making a Trundle top tier list. So, the categories that I have here, it's just easy matchups, farm lanes, Trundle favored matchups, skill matchups, matchups that are favored in the enemy, that are favored for the enemy, and difficult matchups, and then, good bans. So let's start out with the most obvious one, and that's probably going to be Jax, because, well, if you played a little bit of Trundle, you might know that, Jax's E is this really strong ability against auto attacks, and yeah, if you're playing Trundle versus Jax, then Jax, if he presses E, he can basically just become invincible, and he can basically just block all your auto attacks for like 2 seconds or something like that, and yeah, he can hit you, you can't hit him, so he kind of wins that. It's a little bit easier now since the removal of the lethal tempo. But I would still say that yeah, you're probably the best off playing against Jax. Another one that would go into the banned category here might be Teemo, because well, if the Teemo knows what to do, you're probably just gonna be having a Doran Shield and a Second Wind and farming under your tower. And yeah, you can ban either Jax or Teemo. Both are really good bans. And yeah, I think those are the two that you should think about. Ban either Jax or Teemo every single game, really. And then we go into the difficult matchups. So Akali. If the Akali is good, then you basically have no way of playing the game. Akali is really good against melee champions in top lane anyways, and she can just poke with Q. If she has fleet footwork, it makes it even more difficult. And if you ever get the chance of like coming near her, then she's just gonna use her shroud and get away. So not a very fun matchup. Other champions that would fall into the difficult category would be champions like Akshan, you know, ranged champions in general, they can just poke you and you really cannot do anything about it. For example, do we have Vayne somewhere here? Yeah, Vayne is kind of there as well. Because, even if you try to approach her, if she pops ult, and then, she can just, smack you away, and yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. And even if you take Flash and Ghost, even then it's going to be really difficult because if you pop Flash, they just flash through, and if it's like a Vayne, if they have their ult and all their abilities up, there's no way you're gonna catch up to them unless they like make a really big mistake. There's no way. The only way how you win this is that you get help from your jungler. That's basically it. And Twisted Fate goes in the same category too. It's really bad. And Kennen can actually. Yeah, it's difficult, but with a lot of these champions like Twisted Fate and Kennen in lower elos, it could be possible to have a farm lane with them if they don't play that aggressively, and if you have enough sustain in your runes, then it is possible. But yeah, you are going to be at a disadvantage if you play against any of these. So yeah. Then in the enemy favored, category, I would probably put uh Darius. It is possible to be the Darius. Oh. Yeah. There's one more. Gragas. Gragas is also really difficult because if you try to approach him, he has E. A lot of Gragas players in top lane use Face Rush too, and he has a lot of slows. He has his ultimate too. It's going to be really risky, and it's going to be really difficult to really play against Gragas. But I've found out that some Gragas players, they tend to shove in waves. It's the case with a lot of champions here that have this kind of a thing where you are getting shoved in and it's just like pushing waves to your tower and then trying to harass you under it. You have a chance of getting them caught out if they have their guard down. If you get a good pillar in, but yeah, it's not a consistent way of beating these guys. So yeah. Darius is, I would say it's not difficult, but it's definitely Darius favored, especially the early levels. And like all of these matchups, you basically have to concede prio. So when it comes to getting to the Void Grabs or the Scuttle Crab first, if you're facing any of these guys, they're probably gonna be there before you. So yeah, you just gotta ping your jungler to back half, I guess. Aatrox, I wouldn't say that Aatrox is difficult. You can definitely farm a lot more than you when you're against Aatrox than these other guys here. But it's still Aatrox favored because he is basically the one who decides when fight happens. If the Aatrox player plays correctly, which rarely happens, but yeah, like there's always mistakes happening. That's what I'm trying to say. I would also like to put Jace in the enemy favorite tab. It can vary with the Jace's skill. Like good Jace players, they would probably take face rush, or maybe not even that. I think they would maybe even do okay with just Conqueror. I don't know, because Jace can still knock you back like that, and if you get too close, they can just do that and run away. So yeah, I would either put Jace in difficult or enemy favored, but I would say like the difficult part, like the execution, it's on the Jace's part. So yeah, you can win, but you can also lose that. And then skill matchups, I would. Oh yeah, I would also maybe put Mordekaiser in enemy favored because Mordekaiser is kind of just a big mid-stick, and I know that Trundle is one too, but Mordekaiser is even more so. And yeah, if the Mordekaiser is like somewhat decent, they're just gonna kind of poke you with Qs and Es, and yeah. Typically, in my experience, Mordekaisers, they're kind of difficult to kill. So, yeah. It's either enemy favored or I might put him in the farm lane, honestly. Because Mordekaiser is really difficult to kill him if they have any bit of experience with him. And it's really difficult for them to kill you too. So yeah, I would say Mordekaiser's just farm lane. But yeah. I would also maybe put Kale on the skill matchup just because, or maybe, yeah, it's kind of like a farm lane, honestly. You're going to be pushing the wave a lot, and you can't really kill the Kale unless they just like completely mess up. But yeah, Ilawi, I would say that it's an enemy favorite matchup. Or it might honestly go to the skill matchup tab because it depends on what the Ilawi does. If they push you to your tower, then you can kind of use your E, even though earlier I said that, it's an inconsistent way of dealing with all of these matchups, like relying on your E to knock them into tower range and kind of chasing them that way. With Ilawi, it happens really often, and I would say that it's consistent here, because usually when you play against Ilawi, they're going to be pushing the waves. And if the Ilawi doesn't miss if they miss their E, then you basically win. But if they don't miss their E, you lose. So it's up to you dodging the E and the Ilawi, being good enough with it. Gnar, I would put it to farm lane. Because unlike these matchups, Gnar isn't really that oppressive. Early game at least. It's only after he gets like Trinity Force and stuff, in my opinion. So yeah, Gnar, it's kind of like a farm lane. Mundo, I would put it to easy because you can activate Mundo's passive with your pillar, and that makes for easy ganks. But you also have your ultimate, which is really strong against Mundo, and in my opinion, it's kind of easy to zone off Mundo's off of the wave, and yeah, Mundo's cleaver, it doesn't really do any poke to you anyways, especially if you rush Ravenous. So yeah. Gwen, I would put to enemy favored, because if the Gwen is any good at spacing, it's going to hurt a lot, and your ultimate does not do a lot against her, especially if it's one of those Gwens that like taking TP and ignite. Yeah, like if you're against the Gwen and if she has ignite and ultimate, you're probably gonna die. Before the removal of lethal tempo, it wasn't really that one-sided, but I feel like right now Gwen is definitely a lot stronger against Trundle than before. Camille, I would say it's definitely Camille favored, because Camille is basically going to be the one who decides when fights are going to happen and when not, and yeah, she has a lot of tools to just keep Trundle out of the way and just farm the minions and get to her power spikes. And after the Camille gets Trinity Force, you basically have no way of fighting against her. Unless, something happened early game, like some jungle shenanigans or whatever. You could maybe go like Flash Ignite and try to really bully her early game, but I like taking TP and Ghost. So as someone who takes TP and Ghost, I definitely felt like Camille is really oppressive early game for Trundle. Yeah. Fiora, I would say it's a skill matchup. If the Fiora is good, they win. If the Fiora is bad, they lose. That's basically how it goes. You have a lot of opportunities to fight off a Fiora, and the ease of execution is basically on Trundle. So there's more chances of the Fiora making mistakes than there is for Trundle. You just Q or auto attack, and that's how it goes basically. I would say that Irelia is also a skill matchup. In my experience, a lot of average or bad Irelias, they just typically lose. But if the Irelia is like really good, then and if they can hold their lead and not die, then yeah, they can definitely win. Gangplank, I would say it's also a skill matchup because it's really easy for, Trundle to break his barrels. You can auto attack and Q, and that takes like 2/3 of the barrel's HP. And yeah, it also, if you get some items, like if you prioritize buying boots and like speed items, then you can basically just run the Gangplank down over and over again if you want to freeze. And talking about freezing, if you are in this kind of a position, I would really think a lot about whether you should buy Ravenous or Trinity Force. Because if you buy Trinity Force, when you have the advantage and when it's beneficial for you to freeze, then I would buy Trinity Force over Ravenous, because if you buy Ravenous, you basically concede control of the wave. You cannot freeze when you buy a Tiamat. When you buy your Tiamat, then you basically just have to push. There's no point in freezing, really. Kled, I would say it's enemy favored. Kled has built-in Grievous wounds within his kit, so naturally he has the advantage. Garen, I would say it's a farm lane. You can't really kill him, and he can't really kill you. Cho'Gath, I would say that Cho'Gath is easy. He's really immobile, so it's really easy for him to get caught out. It makes up for easy ganks, and you can also run him down really easily that way. Plus, he's really tanky, so your ultimate just does its thing. It's a pretty easy matchup. Malphite, I would say it's a farm lane. Malphite's not really that oppressive against Trundle. It's more like a neutralizer, much like Gragas, but it's much more easier for Gragas to be like oppressive and to really choke out the Trundle. So that's why I put him in the difficult tier. Cassante, definitely a skill matchup too. Or it's kind of like like it depends. If the Cassante is good, he wins. If it's bad, he loses. That's how it goes. He kind of goes to the farm lane, but he kind of goes to the skill matchup as well. And what else? Nasus, I would say Nasus is farm lane. You can't really kill him, and he can't really kill you. You both have summon sustain. It's just farm lane. Whoever has the better macro wins, basically. But after 6, he kind of I would put Nasus into enemy favored after the 6th. Yeah. Olaf, I would say Olaf is a skill matchup. Olaf and Trundle have a lot of similarities. They both like auto attacking, and yeah, you can still use your pillar when Olaf has his ultimates, so that's a nice thing. But I wouldn't say that he's either like I wouldn't say that the matchup is in his favor or Trundle's. I would say it's a skill matchup. Quinn, definitely in the difficult tier. The only way how you can beat up a Quinn is by having her do a mistake, and that's by him messing up his E. The one where Quinn does the jump and blinds you. If they throw that when they're near you tower, then you can pop Ghost and run them down. Most of the time. If you immediately go after her when she blows that carelessly, then you have a chance. But otherwise, it's a pretty difficult one. Yorick, I would say that Yorick is Trundle favored, but it can definitely also um, be Yorick favored. But I would say that the thing that makes it Trundle favored is that it's easy for Trundle to break his cage, and Trundle has so much movement speed with Ghost and W that most of the time you can also just avoid his cage completely and just run him down. So, yeah. I would put Ornn mm, into farm lane. Can't really kill him. He can't really kill you. So, yeah. Renekton, I would put Renekton into skill matchup because if the Renekton knows his combos, he wins. But if he doesn't, Trundle wins. That's how it goes. You need to space his E and his W. That's the big thing about Trundle versus Renekton. I think that's a big thing again when when it comes to most Axe versus Renekton matchups. But yeah, skill matchup. Rammus, I would say it's maybe Trundle favored. Yeah, I would put it to Trundle favored because of a couple of things. First, when Rammus uses his ability, when he gains like a lot of armor, he becomes really tanky. That's when you can use your ultimate. And you can basically just steal all the armor, and he becomes really squishy, Rammus. And when Rammus uses his Q, and you can also do the same thing for his ultimate if you're fast enough, you can cancel both of them. It's easier to cancel Rammus's Q though, and it happens much more frequently. So when Rammus uses his Q and starts rolling, you can just place a pillar down, and yeah, that makes it a lot easier for you to get ganks and makes it much, much more harder for the Rammus to escape. So, yeah. Shen, I would put it to enemy favorite because. Or actually, maybe skill matchup. Because it when it comes to Shen, it really just it's not so much about the lane. Like this one game that I had, there was this Shen player who kept walking out of my sight, and I followed him, and he tried to ult to save his teammates when there were fights happening on other parts of the map. But because I followed him and used my pillar on him, it cancelled his ultimate, and that way I kind of won the game because he couldn't get to affect the map with his ult. So it really depends on who is the more player with more awareness of like the small details, the map, what is going on. Because if you are Trundle and if you are playing against Shen, this applies to all champions who have some kind of form of crowd control or like displacement abilities. If you see a Shen going away from the lane, let's say that they've just pushed a wave to your tower. If you see that happening, and if you see them walk away, just follow them. And most of the time, if you look at the map, you can see that there's a fight happening if that happens. If the Shen starts walking away, they start walking away because they want to ult. But if you just follow them up, then you can most of the time just cancel it. And it's especially easy with Trundle's Pillar because Trundle's Pillar has a lot of range. It's like, I wouldn't say Trundle's pillar. It doesn't have as much range as Lux's E does, but it's somewhere out there. Yeah, it's a skill matchup. If you can prevent Shen from ulting, you win. If you can't, then most of the time you lose. Also, well, there's a lot of other things too. Like, does the Shen use his taunt properly? If they just throw it away when they're overextended at your tower, you can most of the time just run them down. Or if Shen uses that one ability that, makes it so that he blocks all auto attacks. It comes to, yeah, a lot about that as well. Ability usage. But yeah, you can definitely win against Shen. But you can definitely lose it too. Sion, I would say Sion is maybe a little bit Trundle favored because you can cancel Sion's Q with your pillar, and you can also stop Sion from ulting with your pillar if you place it in front of him when he starts ulting. So, yeah. There's a lot of small things you can do like that. Also, it's kind of similar with Gunnar and Malphite. You can block Gunnar's jump with your pillar, or you can block Malphite's ult with your pillar if you're fast enough. But it doesn't happen every game. And the smart players, if there's a smart Gunnar player, they're going to be aware of it, that you can block them. So, yeah. Warwick, I would put Warwick into maybe enemy favored, because before you can get Ravenous, that is yeah, Warwick's just gonna have so much more sustain. And if any point before you get Ravenous you try to fight him, you basically lose. Especially if they take Barrier or Ignite. Against Warwick, you kind of, I think it's worth it to maybe go Grasp and just poke him down and see if he overstays and then fight. Riven, I would say it's a skill matchup again, because if the Riven is good, you lose, and if the Riven is bad, then you win. It's a really coin flippy lane, I would say. It can, like, if you get a small lead, it really turns into a big one really quickly. Rumble, I would say Rumble is enemy favored because, yeah, Rumble just has a lot of tools in its disposal to just hide around Trundle and make Trundle's life really miserable, honestly. Yeah. You can win, but it requires mistakes from the Rumble player. You have to play around the waves. That's what it comes down to as Trundle. Like, a lot of these matchups, they don't really... They have more to do with the waves than the champions themselves. If you can manage your waves really well, then you can really have an impact on how most of these lanes go. Set, I would say, is maybe a little bit Trundle favored, but I'm kind of wanting to put it into skill matchup for a couple of reasons. The first being that a lot of set players, they just carelessly throw out their W. Usually at the end of a combo or a trade, they just throw out their W like this. They just throw it out like that without a second thought. And if they do that, once you have 6 and, you know, a couple of items and maybe boots, then you can really easily just run them down. If they don't have W, what are they gonna do? They just die. But you have to do it immediately after they use it. If you wait a little bit, then, you know, sometimes there can be enough time for it to come back. But yeah, in a nutshell, if the set knows how to manage their W, it's gonna be a farm lane. If they don't know how to use their W correctly at correct times, then you win. Yeah. There's also a lot of like small things. With Trundle, knowing how much you can take, how much damage you can take with your ultimate is a big thing. And baiting enemies into thinking they can kill you in general is a big thing. And it plays into a lot of these matchups. I cannot really explain all the small things in a list like this, but yeah. This is a rough estimate like of the matchups based on I'm basing this off of consistency, like how is the matchup going to go on your average match, you know. I'm not talking about some extreme cases where something special might happen and maybe you end up going 20-0 by 15 minutes or something. Not like that ever really happens on Trundle, but yeah, I think you can get the point what I'm trying to tell here. Tom Kench, I would say, is probably probably easy or Trundle favored. Yeah, I would put it on easy because if your jungler has brains, it's really good ganks. It's really easy ganks. Especially like the thing with Tom Kench is that, you know, he can do the dive thing to like blink a certain distance. And you can cancel that with Trundle's pillar. So if you get a gank and, you know, if the Tom Kench uses the, you know, dive ability where he goes like underground and appears at another spot, if you can cancel that with Trundle's pillar, then it's basically a free gank every time that happens. And yeah, it's just easy because, you know, Tom Kench, they like to spend a lot of time with their team. It gives you a lot of time to split push on the other sides of the map. So yeah. Urgot, I would say it's a skill matchup. If the Urgot is good with using their E, and then they win. If they don't, they lose. That's how it goes. A lot of these matchups are also kind of like farm lanes. Like if I could put multiple champions into, like if I could put maybe, let's say Gangplank into both skill matchup and farm lane, I would. But you know, I had to decide between one, so it's a skill matchup. Udyr, I would say, is the farm lane, definitely. He has a lot of sustain, a lot of slows. You cannot ever really catch up to him. So you can only really just farm it out. Zac, I would say, is... Early game, Zac definitely wins. But late game, Trundle can split push. It's not so much about the lane with a lot of these matchups. That's the thing. It makes this makes this entire thing, you know, making this tier list kind of difficult. But I would say that it's a skill matchup. Like with Jack's ability, I think it's Jack's E where he can, you know, jump. You can cancel that with Trundle's pillar too. So yeah, that kind of gives off a little bit of breathing space, you know, and it's really good for ganks as well. But if the Jack is really good, they win. That's how it goes. Um, Volibear, probably a little bit like a farm lane. If the Volibear is like mindful, and if they have like at least two brain cells bouncing off of each other in their head, then you win. I mean, no, you don't win. But what I'm trying to say that is that then the Volibear basically just survives. It's really difficult for them to die. And it's really difficult for the Volibear to kill you. A lot of the things that, like, for example, the Darius matchup, even though it's definitely favored in Darius' side, what ends up happening a lot of the times is that they get frustrated because they can't kill you. And they try to dive you, and you know, if you are good at using your pillar, you can survive a surprising amount of dives and gain an advantage that way. But yeah, that definitely doesn't happen every game when you're against the Darius. So, you know, if the Darius is smart, they win. What else? Wukong. I would say Wukong is a skill matchup. You can steal a lot of AD away from him, but Wukong definitely, yeah, he has decent ganks, and Wukong in lane has a lot of damage as well, a surprising amount of damage. So it's a skill matchup. Tryndamere, I would say it's farm lane. You can't really kill him. He can't really kill you. If you feel really uncomfortable, you could even go Flash and Ghost to really run away from him, but in my experience, I've been okay with TP and Ghost. And then you just build Ravenous, and then no one dies, basically. Yone. I would say right now, Yone is really weak, so I'm just gonna put him down to easy. It's really easy for Trundle to kill him too. The only thing you have to be mindful if you're playing against Yone is that when he uses his spirit form, I think it's his E, don't try to chase after him, but go to the place where he used it at, because that's where he's gonna return. And yeah, he kind of wants you to chase him, and so that he can, you know, damage you and kite you. But if you go to where he plays the ability down, then it makes it a lot more difficult for him. And also, when Yone uses ultimates, you want to stand in front of it. So yeah, he doesn't really get that much distance from you. Because the way that Yone's ultimate works is that if there's someone in front of them, Yone just kind of blinks behind them. So if you right in their face when they use that, they just appear on the other side where you're at. So it makes a lot easier. It makes the entire thing a lot easier for you to run him down like that. What else? Changed, I would say, since this farm lane. The only thing you have to look out for is when the game starts, you can camp at your first tower, the inhibitor tower, and you need to kind of escort your wave to the middle. You need to kind of escort your wave, because if you don't, Singed is just gonna proxy. They're gonna run to your side of the jungle at the beginning of the game and just proxy you. So you can prevent that from happening if you just escort your wave to the lane. And yeah. Maybe Rengar. I would put Rengar into Trundle favored because Trundle kind of wants, enemies to um come close, and Rengar kind of does that. So even if Rengar jumps at you from a bush, you can slow him down with Goose and kind of run him down. So yeah, I would say it's Trundle favored. Of course, it really depends on the Rengar's skill. So maybe it's a skill matchup, yeah. But I would say it's still Trundle favored. Yeah. Some other champions. Karma is kind of difficult. Karma in general does really well against melee champions, and you can't really kill him. So Karma is like a difficult tier or a farm lane, either one. Pantheon, I would say it's enemy favored. Pantheon can take really short trades and just bully you. The only thing you can do against Pantheon is cancel his ult with your pillar, but that's about it. It's really easy for him to block damage as well, he can just press E and he blocks all your auto attacks with his shield, so there's not much to that matchup. Briar, I would say it's easy. If they just run at you, then you just kill them. That's it. Um, what else? Swain. Maybe enemy favored. Swain has a lot of slows, and his ultimate is really good as well. It's more sustained than what Trundle has before Trundle gets Ravenous, so yeah. Lilia, enemy favored. And yeah, I think that's most of the top lane champions. Also, Yasuo, I would put Yasuo into easy tier. The fact that you can slow him and that you have your ultimate and that you steal AD from Yasuo is really bad for him. So most of the times when I've had to face a Yasuo, I've just won. If you're having a really rough time, you just need to make sure that you dodge his cues, when he does the pokes with his swords. If you can kind of like go left and right between the pokes, then you win. But yeah, maybe Poppy. I would put Poppy into a farm lane. Or maybe Trundle favored. If Poppy pushes you to a wall at a bad spot, you can capitalize on that really easily with your pillar. Plus, you have your ultimate, so naturally, you're going to have a good time against Poppy like that. And it's gonna be even easier when you get Ravenous. So, yeah. Cassio, I would put to difficult. Or maybe enemy favored. Because, yeah. You can use your pillar, and if you're really good at predicting his ultimates, you can just turn away, pop Ghost, and run him down. Yeah. Even though it's kind of a skill matchup at the same time, like it is with a lot of these champions. Like, I wouldn't say that it's impossible for a Mundo to beat a Trundle. It completely is, and a good Mundo can definitely beat up a bad Trundle, but it's just that, Trundle naturally has an advantage because of the way how the kids interact. So, yeah. Maybe Shyvana as well. I would push Shyvana into a farm lane. I haven't had much experience facing a good Shyvana, but yeah, I would imagine that it's a farm lane. Farm lane or easy. And that's about it. So this is the final tier list, and if there's anyone who I forgot, let me know in the comments. And I know that there's a lot of things with this matchup tier list that, you know, might not make sense. I can try to explain it in the comments as well. But yeah, this is my vision. And of course, a lot of these matchups, like I said, you know, they might be both like an Irelia, it might be Trundle favored, but you know, if it's good Irelia, it's a scale matchup like that. So yeah, maybe I'll move him down to Trundle favored. Yeah, I'll move him down to Trundle favored because Irelia, especially early game, is really squishy. Irelia's level 1 is really bad, and yeah. Irelia can definitely win against the Trundle, but I feel like Trundle has the advantage there. So, yeah. But yeah, and yes, I might be biased, and this tier list might be just completely garbage, but this is my vision. The only thing I have left to say is to ban Jax or Teemo, and good luck on the Trundle games.